Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So I'd like to reflect today on viveka, which is a Pali word that means solitude or seclusion. And it's a kind of quality or a way of being that the Buddha, in many suttas, recommended for us when he talks about the gradual training for a monk or nun or any person who wants to follow the Eightfold Path. He would encourage us to find a quiet place, find a secluded spot, such as an empty hut or a heap of straw or the root of a tree. And the encouragement is to be alone, Kāyaviveka, to find some kind of bodily seclusion. And naturally enough, when we practice meditation, we often find it helpful, it's conducive, isn't it, to be somewhere quiet and be alone if we can, or sit with other people who are practicing in the same way. So we have a kind of sense of, we have a period of time, at least, when there's nothing else going on around us. And yet, for many of us, the place where we live, the place where we can practice meditation, isn't necessarily so secluded and so silent and so protected. We do what we can, don't we? We do the best we can. And then often our practice can be one of dealing with any kind of reactivity towards disturbances that happen. And just allowing noise to be noise and not making a problem out of it. And for how many of us, when we sit and meditate, are there traffic noises and sounds of other humans doing all sorts of different things? And maybe the people around us in the building where we are doing all sorts of different things. And we just have to be able to work with that, be with that. For monks and nuns, there's an inclination, for sure, for most monastics to be solitary. And monasteries generally are places where there's no TV, there's no radio, there's a lot less going on. And there's every encouragement to find quiet places. We might have a kuti out in the forest somewhere. We can go in, close the door, and we're on our own. And this is wonderful. And we all hopefully have a chance, to sometimes find these kind of conditions by going on retreat or finding quiet places. And this kind of support of silence and solitude and, undisturbed environments is really conducive for practice. There's a sutta in Samyutta Nikaya, in the chapter on monks, a monk called Thera, which in Pali means senior or elder. At the time of the Buddha, Bhikkhu Thera was renowned for being a solitary. Amongst the monastics, he was particularly devoted to solitude. And so Bhikkhu Thera would go on the alms round alone, and he'd walk to and from the village for alms alone, and he would go back to his kuti, eat alone, and then practice alone, meditating, sitting and walking, always in private. And his fellow monks at one time went to the Buddha and told the Buddha about this very solitary monk. And the Buddha asked Thera Bhikkhu to come and see him. And he questioned him, is it true that you spend all your time alone? Even the alms round, you go on your own. And all day you're sitting and walking and practicing in solitude and not mixing with the other monks in the monastery. And Bhikkhu Thera said, yes, indeed, this is what I do. I keep to myself, I keep aloof from all the others, and I practice alone. And the Buddha said, good, very good. But he said, there is a more important way for you to practice solitude. And he spoke in a verse to Bhikkhu Thera, and he said to him, what you really need to do to develop viveka, this quality of seclusion, is you need to not go back to the past and dwell in your memories of things that have gone by. You need to relinquish the future. Don't go forward into speculation about what might happen. And even within the present, you need to let go of any desire or aversion in the mind. This, Bhikkhu Thera, is the way to practice seclusion, to practice viveka. So this is a really wonderful teaching, and it kind of moves us from this concept of Kāyaviveka, putting the body, the Kāya, into a solitary, secluded state to help us, to support our practice. Moving from this level of practicing with seclusion and solitude into the level of Cittaviveka, a mind that is solitary, a mind that is secluded. And in many different teachings and many different ways, the Buddha encouraged us to let go of the past, let go of the future. And we can notice, can't we, in our meditation practice that, the mind will tend to move from the present into memories, into worries and concerns about the future. And we have an opportunity to observe this and to, when we notice this movement away from what's real, what's actually happening now, what actually is. When we notice this movement, we can come back to the present. And it is a kind of seclusion. It is a kind of letting go of company, in a way, letting go of the unreal. and allowing the mind to really settle. And how much can we practice Cittaviveka even when we don't necessarily have the physical seclusion, the conditions of Kāyaviveka? And this really is our work. For most of us, many of us, we find ourselves in communities. We're social beings. We are surrounded by other human beings very often. And rather than trying to get away from them, which can create all sorts of suffering for us, all sorts of resistance, and a sense of kind of obstacles to meditation that are not real obstacles, they're just obstacles in our own minds. Rather than trying, perhaps unsuccessfully, to find the quiet, the silent, the spacious conditions for practice, even without Kāyaviveka, can we practice Cittaviveka? Can we have a mind that is secluded? And this doesn't depend, does it, on the presence or absence of other people, of sounds, of activities around us. It depends entirely, as in this teaching, to Thera Bhikkhu. It depends upon our ability to be present and the ability to cultivate solitude in the heart, the ability to not be distracted, but to be able to practice whatever's going on around us. And this is quite a skill, and it takes cultivation. And for sure, if we ever have the chance to allow ourselves silent, spacious, private conditions for practice, it's really good to do that, to take advantage of that, to allow ourselves to really benefit from Kāyaviveka. But even when that's not possible, this is not a cause to give up on our practice of meditation. It's a chance to cultivate Cittaviveka. And at the time of the Buddha, there were a lot more opportunities perhaps for the monks and nuns to go, as we often read in the suttas, to plunge into forest thickets and find places where there's nobody else. But even in those situations, there would be a whole lot going on, no doubt. I know from spending time in Thailand that the forests in Thailand are so alive with every manner of creature, so much noise, so much activity. And even when you sit to meditate, there's a very good chance that all sorts of creatures will come and start feasting on your body. So you can't really experience stillness, peace and quiet around you in the forests. Interesting. There's a number of suttas where the Buddha speaks about practicing in the forest, in the wilderness, alone. And actually, even as in Thailand today, people have a sense of the wilderness, the forest, as a place that's really scary. There's all sorts of things that can happen to you when you're alone in the forest. There's all sorts of wild animals that could prey on you. There's dangers. And there's a very beautiful sutta in Majjhima Nikaya, I think it's number 4, called Bhayabherava Sutta, Fear and Dread Sutta. And it's all about what it's actually like for people to seek out the wilderness, real solitude in nature. And in this sutta, there's a Brahmin called Janasoni, and he comes to the Buddha and he's discussing with the Buddha how is it possible for people to dare to go out on their own into the wilderness? And the Buddha says, well, it's not easy. It's not easy, actually, to be alone. There are many obstacles. And the obstacles that come up are based on fear. And the reason that we fear solitude is because there are defilements in the mind. I think we can all recognize this when we start to practice meditation, start to develop some degree of Cittaviveka. Come into the body, come home to this body and mind, make space for what is. Turn away from the external world, relinquish, let go of all the input that can come in through the sense doors, and really start to pay attention to what's happening here, this degree of solitude, Cittaviveka. What happens? We start to become aware of the hindrances. The mind won't necessarily dive into a peaceful, quiet state. On the contrary, we notice, don't we, that anything that's a source of agitation for us, any past karma, any conditioning, any memories, thoughts, feelings that are not kind of finished business, any unfinished business, any concerns, worries, anxieties, desires, any sources of aversion. These things will come up for us. Confusion, agitation. And so we start to notice that we're not actually alone. We're not actually at peace. There's all sorts of, almost like people in here. There's all sorts of scenarios. There's all sorts of causes of distress to be faced. And so we have to kind of slowly, carefully, and kindly work our way through the wilderness inside, to put ourselves out into the wilderness externally gives us a chance to do this work, to give ourselves an opportunity to be solitary, whether it's physically or, more importantly, through our practice. To come to a place of solitude is to begin to recognize, work with, bear with the kind of multiplicity of issues that are waiting for us, that are in the mind, in the heart. And in this sutta, Bhayabherava Sutta, the Buddha is explaining to Janasoni that, well, I can go to the wilderness and I can feel at peace. And the reason I can feel safe and comfortable in the forest alone is because inside my heart, in the heart, there is no distress. There's no source of suffering. There are no defilements. Because of this, there's no fear. There's no dread. The Buddha advised monks and nuns in all different ways. Some to go to the forest to practice. He felt that some people, he could see that some people were ready for this opportunity to really enjoy solitude. And others he would advise to stay away from the forest, to stay in the monasteries, to stay around people. And it's very interesting. There's a real compassion there. It's like, how much can we handle? And it's a real balancing act. I know there are many people who can't really quite bear to be alone. It's too disturbing. It's far easier, far more comfortable to be surrounded by noise and distraction than it is to be alone. People will have the TV on, and maybe also the radio, and maybe also something else going on in the background throughout their day, so that even when they're alone, home alone, there's all sorts of other inputs happening for them. Because to be silent, to be solitary, is unbearable. Why? Because even a few moments of silence, undistractedness, and the mind will start to reveal itself to us. And we all perhaps have had a chance through our meditation practice to kind of experience this when we stop and allow for some stillness and silence, the way the mind will reveal itself. And there's a sense of having to bear with that, having to bear with the difficult, the unpleasant, the painful. And we spend all our time, until we know not to, turning away from the suffering that's often just below the surface for us. How amazing to realize when we start to practice meditation that all of this is waiting for us. And the good news is that when we do practice, we start to recognize that the demons are not so frightening after all. The fear and dread can be born. They can be witnessed. We don't have to turn away. We can face up. And in facing the fears, the discomfort, perhaps remorse, agitation, distress in the mind, we can start to observe that these things don't last. They're not permanent. They're changing. And through our wise attention, they have a chance to move through, flow on, arise and pass, arise and pass. And so, as much as we may fear Cittaviveka, Kāyaviveka, the body in solitude, the mind alone, we can really start to appreciate that actually when we allow for seclusion and solitude in our practice, we begin to open to what is and release all the past suffering, all the old karma, all the dukkha that's in the human heart. And this leads us on to the next level of seclusion, which is Upādhiviveka. We start to experience the solitude, the seclusion from the defilements, from the hindrances, and moments of real peace, moments of real safety, wherever we are. And it's important to point out that this doesn't require any special conditions. We may not manage to have Kāyaviveka, a body that's privately kind of tucked away somewhere, quiet, silent, undisturbed. But we can, wherever we are, cultivate the focus, the mindfulness, the samadhi of Cittaviveka, of a mind that's secluded. And as we do this and develop our practice, work with the hindrances, see them arising and passing, we get to develop Upādhiviveka, the mind that's slowly freeing up, free from the hindrances. And the sense is then that wherever we are and whatever's going on around us, there is peace. There is a heart that's not quaking and shaking and reacting. The Buddha said to Janasoni in this sutta, the forest is nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear in the external world. What we really fear and dread is our own defilements, our own dukkha, our own ignorance, our own past suffering. And when we know how to practice, we know how to relate to the defilements in the mind, then we can go out into the wilderness and we can practice very well. Until that time, until we're at ease with ourselves, it's good to practice with others. It's good to seek out wise friends and practice together, support one another. So we can figure for ourselves, what's most helpful for me. Am I ready to go on long retreats, be completely silent, not look at or speak to anybody else? Or is that pushing a little too much? Is that forcing something that's I'm not quite ready for? Is it more beneficial for my practice to actually be with others, be on retreat with a group, talk about practice with other people, enjoy the benefits of Sangha, of wise community? And for many people, many of us, it's maybe a little bit of solitude from time to time, and also time with others. And we get to learn so much, don't we, living in community in different ways. Work, colleagues, family, Sangha, friends in Dharma, monastic life. The skills that we learn and the mirroring that can happen for us around other people can be so beneficial. And the chance to get teachings, hear teachings, ask questions, and benefit from wise teachers. Just watching them, just following their example, and finding nourishment in the group. And so it's quite interesting to consider. Many people who come into monastic life actually are trying to get away from people. One of the common denominators, common attributes of monastics, monks and nuns, is that generally we're people who enjoy our own company, who enjoy being alone, who really seek solitude. And for a lot of monastics, the workout is actually being with other people, having to, fall in line, having to sort of compromise and work with others. And, when you're a kind of person who is comfortable with solitude, then it can be very helpful to be in community, because the opportunity to work against our conditioning, to expand our repertoire, go out of the comfort zone and be willing to put ourselves in places where we're not necessarily at ease, that can be very beneficial. For those who struggle to be alone, who feel uneasy, uncomfortable, and want to be with others, it's helpful to try and develop the ability to be alone, to have quiet time, to switch off the TV, the radio, and just listen to one's own mind, pay attention to what's going on. So we can see, for ourselves, what's our inclination and how to, in some ways, allow that to develop, allow our strength to develop, but also to look at ways in which we can work against those inclinations as well. And so it's a very rich field to explore in every sense. This is good for us to do, to stretch our boundaries, but also to follow our hearts. And in terms of solitude, we have the chance. Fortunately, most of us would have a chance occasionally to go on retreat and experience more stillness, more silent practice, more opportunities to practice noble silence and to sit and bring our attention home and be alone in the meditation practice. And then we, have the opportunity to work with busy lives and often living in cities, crowded places, noisy places, and to allow ourselves to accept the conditions as they are and still to develop a solitary heart, to allow ourselves to experience samadhi. It's not easy to focus necessarily, to concentrate the mind when there's a lot going on around us, but it's not impossible. And this is our work. So these are a few words on solitude. One thing about the sutta I was just talking about is a very touching description from the Buddha about his practice as the Bodhisattva. So before he became enlightened, he spent some of his time in the wilderness. And he said he felt a great fear and dread. He would sit in the forest and he could hear noises around him. And he said he didn't know what he was listening to. And in his mind, he would imagine the worst, some kind of predator approaching him. And he said oftentimes he would realize that actually it was just a bird, it was just a small creature. But because of fear, his mind would magnify the sounds, and he would feel extraordinary amounts of fear and dread. And he said when this happened, he would make sure that he stayed in the same posture until the fear and dread passed away. And just imagining that willingness to be with. Fear has that energy for me, fear and also anger, very similar. They compel us to move, to get away, to do something, to get out of this awful feeling. But what the Buddha did was stay with it, stay steady, not move, whatever comes. Just that resolution to work with the fear as a priority, never mind anything else. And Ajahn Chah also describes a very similar practice. When he was a young monk, he would go off to the forest in Thailand. He would go to the charnel grounds, the burning, the place where bodies were burned. He would go there. He would go there at night, and he would sit, and he would be terrified. He did this in order to face the fear, to face the kilesa, the defilements. And I'm not suggesting we all go out and do this in whatever ways we might be able to do this. I definitely wouldn't suggest putting ourselves at risk, going out in the city at night and sitting in secluded spots. Not a good idea. But nevertheless, we can really gain some inspiration from these teachings, and both the Buddha and then Ajahn Chah, who was really following this way of working with fear, working with the defilements. And I take this as a encouragement, you know, when there's strong emotion, when there's some powerful impulse to act in the face of fear, in the face of anger, in some sort of righteous indignation. Very good to sit tight and be secluded, be still, and stay present, and allow these very strong emotions to have their day, to express themselves without reacting, to bring in equanimity, bring in patience, bring in determination, and just to watch the arising and passing. And it's beautiful to be able to do this, to be with strong emotion, to be with the kilesa, to be with the defilements in the mind, and let them come and go. And noticing the cessation, noticing the end of those defilements is the taste of freedom. It's a little sort of mini liberation right there. So it's a very beautiful sutta, the Bhayabherava Sutta, and it also lists all the different kinds of defilements that we can experience. And it's a very helpful list to read through. Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 4, just to read through all the ways in which we can suffer. And I like to read this and other suttas which list all the different kind of flavors of suffering, and just to see, just to investigate, can I find this? Can I find this? And let me see if it's present in the heart. To investigate in this way can be extremely helpful. So I think I'll finish here, and hope that some or all of what I've said is of some use and benefit to you, and very good wishes for your practice, everyone who's listening in. Everyone.